Hi, I'm Dane, and I beat the often path by founding EcoCart. And with EcoCart, we are on a mission to save the planet one e-commerce order at a time.
Welcome back to the Beat the Open Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer. On this show, we showcase unusual success stories, often with an eco-friendly slant, to help us think outside the box and radically redefine what success means in our own lives and in our own careers. Dane Baker is the founder of EcoCart, an inspiring way for businesses and e-commerce customers to offset their carbon footprint. Dane is a serial entrepreneur who's always seen the world just a little bit differently. He wanted to find a win-win-win for businesses to offset their carbon footprint right at the checkout stage. So what does this mean? It means that if you install his Chrome extension, you can automatically offset the carbon footprint of your own purchase from so many retailers by just adding a small amount to the purchase price. It's a really innovative way to help solve the problem of e-commerce waste. Dane is a very smart dude, and his passion for making the world a better place is palpable. So I'm super excited to introduce you to Dane Baker of EcoCart. All right, saving the planet one e-commerce order at a time, and yet you yourself do not have an e-commerce company. So explain how that works.
Great question. We got started with EcoCart about 3 years ago, all because we lived this problem ourselves. We had my co-founder and I had a prior company where we were actually renting through a peer-to-peer marketplace, renting items like surfboards, kayaks, snowboards between networks and peers. And we created that platform really because we thought that renting, in contrast to consumption, was a greater benefit for the environment. But as we scaled, it became very complicated, very expensive to maintain that sustainability ethos and rigor. And so we tried everything. It was very complicated, very expensive, prohibitively so. And so we realized there was a problem. We ultimately sold the company, and then I spent a little bit of time venture investing after that. But then ultimately, that problem always stuck in the back of my mind as one that needed to be solved in the world. And so that's when my co-founder and I came back together about 3 years ago to start this journey. And again, like I mentioned, we're trying to save the planet one e-commerce order at a time.
I love that tagline. It's brilliant. So, all right. So tell us exactly, how does the product work?
Yeah, so we've developed a technology to calculate and then ultimately offset the carbon footprint of any purchase, any consumer activity, any purchase. And we sell this technology directly to e-commerce brands. So, and retailers generally, it doesn't have to be e-commerce. So what we do is we take factors, our technology, our algorithm takes factors like shipping distance, package weight, product type into account to be able to calculate the specific carbon footprint of any purchase. And then ultimately displays a checkbox to the consumer at checkout through an e-commerce platform to be able to make their order carbon neutral by adding a few extra cents to their order. With that, we're then funding certified carbon offset projects like planting trees, building wind farms, sustainable agriculture, really frontier carbon removal technology. And that's how we make the order carbon neutral. So we, by way of this solution, we are helping brands, show their customers they care about the environment as much as their customers do.
That's so incredible. So I have to ask, are you putting that burden then on the consumer? They're the ones who have to spend. Do the brands ever say, we're going to contribute the extra few cents?
Yeah, so they do. And actually, it's interesting you sort of use that phrase, probably unintentionally, of course. We don't consider it a burden in any way. Actually, it's the consumer has the opportunity to play that role in their sustainability journey. A lot of consumers actively want to do this. In fact, even decide they want to pay more, right? And then ask us, demand ways that they can actually contribute more to offset their carbon footprint. So the short answer is consumers love it. And the longer answer is we do have also some brands that decide to cover it on their behalf. To make all of their orders carbon neutral as well. So the model is flexible. We do have some brands on board. We actually have 2,000 brands we work with today, which is, and we only launched about a year and a half ago. So it's been an amazing year and a half and something that we're really proud of, just the demand in the marketplace. But it is flexible in that the brand can decide that they want to cover it or offer it to their consumer.
Amazing. And you say you've come a long way, and that's really true because you were just named to Forbes 30 Under 30 for this year, right?
Correct. Yeah. That was a fun one. That was awesome.
So you're doing it. You're reaching the upper echelons with what you're doing, and you're building this model. It's gaining so much momentum. It's incredible to see. So when you're approaching these companies, when you're getting started, Have you felt that they were excited to be a part of this, or were they hesitant, or how has the reaction been trying to get companies on board?
Yeah, so great question. And I've been humbled in a lot of ways over the last couple of years. And one of which of those experiences has been just simply the demand in the market by both consumers and brands. And we see immense support for our work and what we're doing. And a lot of a lot of why this happens is and why I say this is a lot of the brands we work with today and we have partnered with already have actually come inbound to us, right? They actively reach out to us. We're not, it's a pull, not a push from our perspective. So we see a lot of brands who are really interested in a solution like this and actively asking how they can join the EcoCart community. And that's been a lot of our 2,000 brands we've successfully brought on into the EcoCart community so far. And that sheer fact, I mean, it's a majority. So it's greater than 50% of our brands have actually come inbound to us. So it's a really humbling fact and something that we fundamentally believe is becoming standard in the checkout world, right? There's let's just forecast out 3-5 years from now. This is absolutely going to be something that exists in every single checkout flow for consumers to contribute alongside the brand to ultimately have a carbon neutral order. And I think, this is something that we're really leading this movement towards a sustainable shopping experience for both brands and consumers.
So I pay the extra money. I'm done with it. I get the product. That's done. So you collect the extra money, and then where is it going? How is it being offset? What are some of the partners that you use?
Yeah, so we've actually built this project network, and when I say that, essentially what we mean by that is we have about a dozen plus sources of projects that we purchase offset projects from, and so we have created this sort of independence in how we go about this. So a lot of you can go and buy offsets other places, right? There are offset brokers that sell you projects and other platforms. We're agnostic in our project source, and so what this means for our brands, the consumers, is they get the best projects for the lowest prices. And so we've done all that work up front to heavily vet projects, heavily vet brokers, and the specific project sources that we're able to purchase projects from. And aggregate all of this into our platform and provide this to the consumer and to the brand, of course, in a nicely curated portfolio. So that's how we've been able to secure the best projects, right? Is through this methodology, and that again has an amazing effect when it comes down to what the brand sees, what the consumer sees, and overall the experience.
Incredible. So what would be the top 3? What are your favorite examples? What mechanism? Windmills? I mean, what's the most interesting manner of doing this?
Yeah. So, we have tons of projects across different categories. Forestry-based projects. We have, sustainable agriculture, methane capture projects. We have, wind farm building projects. We have a ton of, in general, just alt energy projects. So it's varied across category, but also geography. So projects all over the world as well. Some of my favorites, we in the past had projects that are building water filters for folks in local developing nations, so that they can have clean water. And that might at first might not seem like, well, how is that reducing CO2 from the atmosphere? And that actually comes from the fact that the alternative to purifying what was like river water, let's just say, or whatever that sort of water source was, would be boiling it over a wood burning stove. And so not only are we preventing forests from being cut down, but we're also preventing the need for the actual emissions that are caused from an actual active wood burning fire. So that's one example of a project that's kind of near and dear to my heart that we've had in the past. And so things like this, right, that just kind of are doing really, really great things for the community and for the environment together. So that's a small example of some of our projects.
How did you end up here with this idea?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I've always, I am sort of an entrepreneur minded, right? And so I've always tried to start, something or had a project of some sort. And they've all had a pretty similar theme of trying to make the world a better place in some way, shape, or form. Now that has evolved in a few different ways, right? Like the last company that I mentioned was something that we started inherently because we thought that renting versus consumption was better for the environment, net benefit. And so, all of the undertakings that I've done personally have always, tried to weave in how to make the world a better place. And so I think that that's, always been how I view, the sort of the energy that I output on sort of a daily basis and the things that I choose to work on and spend my time on. And that can have a really amazing sort of multiplier effect of impact in the world. And so, that has never been, more strong than as of recently when, again, we had this idea, this sort of, light bulb moment of taking carbon offsets and something that has traditionally been, scrutinized a ton as a vehicle to affect change, and then making that incredibly transparent, making that available to the consumer at the point of purchase as a distribution mechanism by way of an e-commerce brand, and all the while helping the brand. And so that sort of make that beautiful, trifecta mixture of benefits and good that's being done here, is a win-win-win-win across the board. And that just felt like just an incredible pull to jump in and start the company. So that's kind of how I thought about it.
I love win-win-wins. That's what the show is all about, trying to find those win-win-wins. Things that are good for you personally, good for the world, good for all of that, because it can happen if we focus on it. And not a lot of people are focusing on it. And if you don't set something as your goal, you'll never achieve it. So you set that as your goal to have a win-win-win, and you're doing it. I think that's incredible. Were you the kid on the playground who was selling other kids candy bars when you were 7 years old? Were you always entrepreneurial in nature?
Yeah. Yeah, to some extent. I remember one specific instance. I was lived across the street from an avocado orchard, and so I remember one specific instance. I would pick avocados and then go door to door when I was like 7 years old and try to sell them to my neighbors at a pretty small scale, of course. But yeah, I've always wanted to do things like that. Had lemonade stands, of course, as a kid growing up, and all those things just really excited me always, right? So yeah, I'd say yeah to some small extent, and then ultimately came to realize that that energy and effort of doing that not only was really was fulfilling from a personal perspective, but also can parlay that into good for the world, right? And that's kind of where the power of trying to have that good for the world sort of mentality in the work that we do, and that's how I found a lot of fulfillment personally. So good.
Did you ever take on a corporate job? Have you ever had a normal job in your short career so far?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've always worked. I've always been always worked. Really hard even throughout school, and so I have had a handful, if not a dozen jobs in different capacities. Throughout my time. Being a sort of young professional. So yeah, I've dabbled in had internships, dabbled in the sort of corporate world. Not to any sort of longer term extent, but yeah, had the experiences across different companies and experiences, which all I've always thought as like learning experiences for what I'm doing now and today, and it's just been it's been a great journey to kind of get to use all of those different experiences, no matter how different they have been, and take little nuggets of information and learnings, and sort of craft. And always be sort of focusing on improvement. And so that's how I've sort of thought about it. And I think it's been really meaningful from the perspective of being able to build, a company and a team together. So it's been great.
That's so cool. So very cool. To the people out there who want to pursue this, again, the people who are talking to are thinking maybe they want to create a win-win-win. They want to build a business like you have. In the beginning stages, what's the most important thing? How do they get funding? How do they get that idea off the ground to start something and to start building the change they want to see?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's often the hardest part, to be honest. For me, the main thing that I learned, and something that if I were to go back and tell myself, 3 years ago, hey, this is the one piece of advice I would give, would probably be just get started. So there's a lot of analysis paralysis that can happen when considering something to jump into, whether it's a project or whatever it may be, right? And so I think you'll never know until you actually do it, right? So two things that come sort of sub bullets as part of that idea is try to what I found success doing is de-risk it as much as possible by doing a bunch of research, figuring out, is this the right market, is this the right idea, is this the right space, are there competitors out there doing something similar, what is the alternative that a potential customer is doing today, and how can we do it better, right? And so doing all that research up front, de-risking it, and then ultimately getting yourself comfortable to a point, because you'll never be 100% comfortable jumping into anything, but getting yourself comfortable to a point, maybe 70, 80% of the way there. And then at some point just saying, let's just try it. And then having the mentality of, figure out if it works fast. And if not, then get out. So basically fail fast, right? Is kind of the standard adage. And I'd say that's probably the best advice that I would go back and give my own self about 3 years ago.
Fail fast. Yeah, well, you live in Silicon Valley, basically. So These are all the talking points. We've heard it again and again. Fail fast. Also infinitely scalable. You've got a software solution, which is great. So you're hitting all of the boxes, which is fantastic. All right, folks, it's time for a quick commercial break. Now, I've been doing this for a very long time, and let me tell you, folks, it's a pretty thankless job to create another podcast in a sea of about 1 trillion of them. Who the hell cares? So I'm going to use the sponsorship time that will one day be filled for tens of thousands of dollars, I'm sure, by brands like Patagonia to plug my own ethical marketing company, Aloha Marketing. That's ALOA Marketing. We specialize in helping mission-driven startups, nonprofits, and people and organizations with a message worth sharing, from e-commerce websites with thousands of products to redesigns to social media management, content creation, video, audio like this piece you're listening to right now, to SEO, to learning management systems, and much more. We handle all aspects of your brand and marketing in the digital age. So if you are in need of assistance, or if you know someone who does, visit aloamarketing.com. That's aloamarketing.com. And now, enough of that nonsense. Back to the show. Many people have had an idea in their life. They've been having a few drinks with a friend. They've got an idea. How do you know, aside from the research, whether that idea has the potential or whether that might be something that you could go all in on? Because at some point you do kind of have to go all in, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's a mixture, right, of there's always data, right, that's going to help get you comfortable with that. Again, but only to a certain point, right? So data only helps up into a point, and then it's like, then it really is gut driven, like you can't really, I guess, accurately describe the right tipping point to jump in there. It's just a matter of, do you have your bases covered with, have you just done your research and figured out, is this the right space, the right market? And then, to a certain point, once you're, 70, 80% of the way there in terms of confidence, then it's just a matter of having the, having the courage to just jump in and do it. And I think that's really the key is, a lot of folks, I think, and what I've noticed, a lot of folks are trying to be 100% confident. Like they have to be like, there's no risk. They sort of, only comfortable doing something, unless unless it's as riskless as possible. But I think that there's always, there's always going to be some margin of error that you have to just sort of naively jump into. And that's, there's a time and a place to do that. And I think, again, the sooner the better.
So how quickly into this journey, since it is relatively new and you've had some pretty impressive accolades already, how quickly into it were you validated? Was there a tough period where you didn't know if it was going to work, or was there pretty much instant feedback from day one that gave you some encouragement?
Great question. Let's see. I think there's a few ways of looking at it, different like layers and levels. I would say there's always been some degree of like product market fit where customers have always been like, this is awesome. I love what you're doing. I want to use it. But I would say it's really accelerated since, if you look at the timeline of the company, like initially, I would say we don't feel it. I didn't feel it as much back then as I do now. And that's probably for, a few reasons. Just general consumer sentiment. There's, also like, we've also just built like a trusted brand in the space. And so there's a lot of things working in our favor. But I would say, we've been fortunate to always, have there be some semblance of this is a needed solution in the market. Consumers are going to demand this. Brands are going to demand this. I think now it's becoming clear, though, that it's absolutely, going to become standard and something that consumers demand. And so, we're very fortunate again to sort of be leading that charge because it's one it's absolutely happening, and there's a lot of tailwinds to sort of help guide us forward. But yeah, it's been a journey, but I feel it now more than ever.
That's amazing. So you've always had a bit of positive encouragement. Now, if I'm a brand and I want to implement your technology, I've got an e-commerce store. How does that process work? I'm assuming that your algorithms are pretty much automated, or do you have somebody that comes in and actually tries to figure it out?
Yeah. So it's depends on the partnership. We have many of our partners that decide they want our help upfront through a consultant-like experience to calculate the carbon footprint for them, and we do that. So we have a team of emissions analysts who work through these projects every day, and so it depends on the brand's preferences. We're a flexible partner, but overall, we do have the ability and capability to work with you in a really in-depth way to calculate your carbon footprint as a company and as a brand, and be able to report that to you, on a regular basis, such as annually or quarterly, and then parlay those insights into the algorithm that would feed the inputs to the algorithm in real time.
Super amazing. So you would probably know with all of the major shipping carriers in the U.S., for example, if I'm doing UPS 2-day versus this distance, it's generally this. Is that a relatively standard figure?
It gets pretty granular. So there's a lot that goes into it. That's one factor, right? The carrier, the amount of time it takes to ship, the method, all these things together play a factor into what the carbon footprint actually is. Manufacturing of the item itself is another thing that we pride ourselves on of being able to calculate, which is a really tough thing to do, actually. And so we have developed a database to be able to calculate what the carbon footprint is of manufacturing and production of really any consumer item. And our product coverage is increasing on a daily basis as we move forward. So it's a lot of factors, but yeah, the short answer is it definitely is definitely very granular, and something that we take a sort of bottoms up approach to be able to figure that out.
Do you ever sort of come in as a consultant and then you look at some company and you point something out to them and they realize that what they're doing is insane, or that there's just a much better alternative to something that they've always been doing, and then they cut that piece out then and there?
Yeah. So recommendations are a big part of what we do as well. So, assuming we're able to see behind the curtain, right, with the company and partner with them, we are able to, benchmark and say, hey, you're here, you want to be here, and this is how to get there. And so, recommendations of, towards how to cut your emissions to begin with is an important element of any sustainability strategy, not just offsetting. And so we provide those recommendations as well as part of our analysis. So absolutely.
What do you think about those companies? And this is an interesting thing, because you have a company that maybe has practices that are not very carbon friendly, and they're now just starting to offset, or they're using your product. It's sort of a gateway product, perhaps, to the larger conversation of how can we reduce, how can we make things better. But I've always found it an interesting thing when companies or people, they're not in alignment, where somebody says that they have a certain set of values and then they don't demonstrate those values. Like, for example, consider an eco-friendly company that treated their employees like crap, for example, or people who pay lip service to these ideals. How important do you think it is that the idea behind your mission is resonated in all aspects of how you do business, down to how you engage with every small piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, it's all important, right? Like being thoughtful about all that is, and having that be top of mind is incredibly important. There's so much, opportunity to affect change that kind of all stems from that type of environment that you're fostering, that everyone feels on a day-to-day basis, that it can only translate into good. And so that's it's a really important point to kind of talk through, because it's all top down. It feels, something that it provides a really great, amazing platform and opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's so true. And we've got to embed all of that into every step of what we're doing, I think. Otherwise, it's disingenuous. And if you say, we're eco-friendly, we're trying to support this, and somebody says, can I have a week off? I just had a baby. And you say, no, your family is not important. We have a 2-week only vacation policy. Then it's hard for people to believe you on the other mission stuff.
For sure.
Do you agree with that? Yeah.
Could not agree more. Yeah. It's very comprehensive, right? It's like, again, folks are looking for an environment to feel like home, right? And you're spending so much time with the folks you work with, and at the company you're working for, that it's got to feel like home. And it's not just it's not just singularly, it's not just one dimensional. It's multifaceted.
Right. How does one know how fast to fail? How does one know how much time to give something? Because certain things take time. Certain things, for example, if everybody who started a YouTube channel or a podcast like this got 2 episodes in and they said, forget that, how many things wouldn't grow because of that? When is the balance when something has officially failed in your mind versus too soon?
Yeah. Again, very situational. It's probably a function of a few different things. Passion for what you're doing. Seeing the success. So like, are there YouTube views? Are there views in your YouTube video? Are people commenting? Are people liking it? Are people sharing with friends? There's success metrics to look at, and it's very situational. But I think there's always that element of passion. And are you excited about what you're doing still? And is that driving you? Because there's tons of stories and examples out there of really successful entrepreneurs, or anyone who have been working on ideas for years without any sign of success, but always fundamentally knew that it was it was going to be something meaningful into the future, and it all of a sudden something clicks in the world for whatever reason. It becomes standard. Airbnb comes to mind, right? Something like this that you have to be. Yes, you have to look at the data and say, okay, well, like, what's happening? And is this, successful in and of itself, but also, are you still, passionate about what you're doing? Or do you fundamentally believe this is happening? Will you sort of continue to, chew glass, like, as they say, to see this through and be able to see it succeed. So it's very situational, I would say, from my, opinion, but ultimately it comes down to, is this something that's going to, drive you to wake up every morning and work on that thing that you're working on?
Mm-hmm. So well said. And that brings us to the most important question of the entire episode, the only one that really matters. If you are over the age of 30 and you haven't been listed to Forbes 30 under 30, is it just hopeless for you? Is that it? Is that game over? You had your chance. You missed your window. You're done. Stick a fork in you.
No chance. There's always an opportunity.
There's always the 40 under 40 list, or maybe
there's always opportunity. That's kind of the beauty of life. I think there's I think famously Mark Cuban says, it only takes one. You only have to be right one time, and then you're looked at as a genius, let's just say, right? And so no way, like anyone can be right, no matter how old you are, no matter what sort of stage of life or, where you live or anything, right? You only have to be right once. And that's the key of it all.
So great. Well, we're approaching the end of the hour here, and I like to always give the last word to the guest. So if there's any piece of advice or anything you want to promote or any action you want them to take, the floor is yours to wrap up this episode. So literally anything at all that comes to mind, now is your time to shine.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Really, really great to be here. At EcoCart, we're always trying to, talk with more brands, talk with folks who, or any companies that might be a good fit for offsetting their carbon footprint in any way. So always welcome a conversation there. Happy to always just be a sort of voice of reason or pointing you in the right direction of how to take more sustainable steps there. And so that's what I would say. Also, we're always looking for folks to join the team in some way, shape, or form. So excited about having a few roles open now, but also over the next 6 to 12 months having a bunch more roles open. So always looking for passionate, excited folks to join the team and help push our mission forward.
Well, I hope that there's somebody out there who will take you up on that. I think that's a very great thing. Somebody who's looking for a chance, well, this might be their chance. You might be their chance. How cool is that?
That's amazing. That was amazing.
So, again, I want to express my heartfelt thanks for you taking the time and how busy you are just to sit with me. I really, really do appreciate it, and you sharing your story. I think it's just incredible what you're doing. I think it's an example of what everybody should be doing. In my humble opinion, I love the win-win-win. I'm so glad that you've taken this upon your shoulders. And I wish you nothing but success. I hope that it takes off like it's poised to do and that you continue to be able to stay in the most expensive place on the entire planet.
Thanks so much, Ross. Really great to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure meeting you. And with that, the podcast is officially over.